Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're going to be playing more of the dual casting seasonal event. That means that the first special card on our turn that we will play twice, and I have a pretty crazy deck to show you all, so let's take a look. Lids from the future coming in to say that although the dual casting seasonal event may now be over, this seemed like a good way to finish things off with a bit of a bang. So stay tuned for videos in the new Momentum seasonal event later on. Okay, so the deck that we're going to play today is a Nilfgaard Double Cross deck that is centered around the Assimilate ability. Double Cross is the leader ability that allows us to play a card from our opponent's hand, and that works well with Assimilate, which, just to give you an example here, means that a unit will get boosted by 1 every time we play a card that is not from our starting deck. So that means that we'll be playing some cards from our opponent's deck and finding other creative ways to create new cards that we didn't start off with. So the first card in our list is Oneiromancy. As is often the case with our dual casting decks, I think this is one of, if not the best cards in this seasonal event, because being able to play this twice means that you get to play 2 cards from your deck, which is already incredibly powerful, but it also means you get to create 2 echoed copies for a future round, so it gets even more powerful. Next, we have Renew, which allows us to play a unit from our graveyard as long as it has a provision cost of 9 or less. And we do have some cards in our starting deck that could take advantage of this, but because we are Assimilate and because we are going to be creating a bunch of new cards, we might be able to find some additional cards to bring back with Renew as well. And one of the ways in which that might happen is Alzur. He's making a comeback here. This was the key component of the first deck that we were looking at in the dual casting seasonal event. What he does is whenever we play a spell card, he will spawn a random unit with the same provision cost in this row, and he can do it 3 times. So, if we have some big, high provision cost spells, like say Oneiromancy, we can create some extremely powerful units. This could be one of the targets for Renew if it's less than 9 provision costs, and generally will add to the chaos of playing with this deck. Next, we have Yennefer's Invocation, which is another spell with a high provision cost and therefore a good card to play along with Alzur, and allows us to swipe a card from our opponent's side of the field. If our opponent is, say, boosting up a unit really high, it's a way of not only getting rid of that unit in the current round, we can use that unit in a future round. Next, we have Coup De Grace, which is another special card, so we'll play it twice, and it can damage an enemy unit by 3. If we take out that unit, then we will spawn and play a base copy of it, so that will trigger Assimilate, and it could lead to us getting some pretty strong cards. And if we target a unit that has the spying status, then that means that we will always trigger that death blow ability. So, say even if it's a 10 strength card, as long as it has that spying status, then we will still be able to create a copy of it, even if we don't get the killing blow. Next, we have Triangle Within a Triangle, which is another high provision cost spell, and we will play it twice. We can either boost an ally by its provision cost, or damage an opponent by their provision cost. Next, we have Idarran of Ulivo, which is a card that I featured in the +1 seasonal event, in which this card broke that event. This time around, it could potentially lead to some very interesting synergies, because we have a few ways in which to spawn new units, and so if we can spawn additional copies of them, then this could be an interesting setup. So it may not always be easy to set it up, but the sky really is the limit with this card. Next, we have Artorious Vigo, who has Assimilate, and when we play him, he will create and play a 1-power copy of a bronze unit from our starting deck. That will trigger Assimilate, and also may lead us to be able to create an Assimilate unit as well. Next, we have Cantarella, who is disloyal, meaning that she could be an easy target for Coup De Grace. Also, when we play her, we will play the top card from our opponent's deck, which could be either a special card that we get to play twice, or it could be a unit that we end up playing on our side. Either way, though, this would trigger Assimilate. Next, we have Devil's Puffball, which is a special card, so we get to play it twice, and it poisons an enemy unit. So being able to do that twice means that we can almost guarantee that we can take out an opposing unit, unless, say, it has Veil. And if we do take out a unit with it, then we can damage the adjacent units by 3. Next, we have Offering, and this is another high-risk, high-reward card. Similar to Idarran of Ulivo, we damage a unit by 1, and if we do destroy a unit in the process, then we get to play a bronze unit from our graveyard and give it doomed. Tricky to pull it off because we need to have a unit that is on really low HP to make it happen, but if we can, then this could be a big addition. Next, we have the Dazhbog Runestone, which will create and play a bronze Nilfgaard faction card, and because it's a special card, we will play it twice. That means that we will trigger Assimilate at least twice. It is possible that we might even trigger it more than that. Next, we have Imperial Diplomacy, which is another special card, so we'll be able to play it twice, and allows us to create and play a bronze card from our opponent's faction. So this is another great way to trigger Assimilate. Next, we have the Slave Hunter, which is one of the best Assimilate units in that it not only has Assimilate, but it also has the ability to damage an enemy unit by 2. Next, we have the Mage Torturer, which is another Assimilate unit. It also has Veil, and when we play it, we get to give an enemy unit Spying, which is a great way to set up Coup De Grace, especially on a unit that has enough strength that we wouldn't be able to get the killing blow on it. Next, we have the Duchess's Informant, which is a disloyal card, so we'll play it on the opposing side, and that makes it an immediate possibility to target it with Coup De Grace, and it will allow us to spawn and play a base copy of a non-disloyal bronze enemy unit. So basically, if our opponent has a bronze unit out there and it's not a spy itself, then we can create a copy of that, which makes this another way to trigger Assimilate. Next, we have the Ducal Guard, which is another simple Assimilate unit. And then finally, we have the Feainn Heavy Cavalry, which is another simple Assimilate unit. So there's a look at the deck. The general theme is Assimilate, yes, but also we just generally have some really crazy stuff that, if and when we can pull it off, can lead to some pretty powerful plays. As for whether that actually happens, that much remains to be seen. For that reason, I'd call this a very high-risk, high-reward deck. Maybe not the best deck to use on the regular, but if you're looking for something to mix things up with, this might be just what you're looking for. Okay, so our first opponent will be Skellige. And to start us off here, we have Idarran of Ulivo. Do we have a way to spawn units? We could with Coup De Grace, and then we could set up Coup De Grace with the Mage Torturers. So I'm seeing this going first into maybe set you up, and then that will create multiple copies of whatever we end up spawning with Coup De Grace. So it could work. It certainly may not work if our opponent has a way to interrupt that combo there, but I'm liking it. I'm liking it. So I think we stick with what we have here. Yeah, let's stick with it. And we go first. So what I'm wondering in that case is maybe we do lead off with Idarran of Ulivo, and then I think we're going to want to use our tactic on him because as soon as we play this card, he's going to instantly become a target for our opponent. So fingers crossed that they don't immediately try to delete him, and maybe by bumping him up to an 11, that discourages our opponent a little bit, at least in way of direct damage. But if they have something like, say, Geralt of Rivia, then they might just immediately get rid of him that way. Oh, and they get to play any special card from their deck. Okay, sure. Uh-oh. Shoop, stay off. Could be anything. What are they going for? No, they're swiping him! How dare you? And now this time, what are you going for? This will be maybe the Resilience one? Oh, and this also triggers it. That triggers Idarran of Ulivo's ability to create multiple copies. No, this was boost an allied unit. Okay. I was going to say, sure, you're swiping him, but at the same time, are you gonna have a way to spawn additional units on the regular? Because we did make a bit of a point of building our deck around that. But, well, you immediately proved my suspicion wrong. So, as for what we do here, well, this is already a spying unit, so you know what that means. Maybe it's not so bad that you stole him, because perhaps we take him right back. Now, do we want to do anything to, say, get an Assimilate unit out there first? Get that boosted a bit in the process? Maybe that's worthwhile? Sure, let's go for it. Next turn, then, we'll use Coup De Grace. Okay, and you're Oneiromancying. What into? Oh no, you're seizing another one of my units? You're playing this like Nilfgaard. And then Snowdrop, draw, and then reshuffle a couple cards. This is also looking a lot like the +1 seasonal event type of setup here. Okay, but sure, it would have been nice to have the Assimilate unit out there, yes, but I think we can still pull this off. So, it'll be Coup De Grace on you, create a copy of you, sure, throw it in, I guess, the range row, and then do it again, and now he should trigger his own ability on himself, which was exactly the combo that was broken in the +1 seasonal event with this card. I think we leave it at this, and we hope that our opponent does not have any ways to mess with this setup, because I'm already excited to see what we can pull off. They're purifying. I was going to say, are you going to deliberately purify Idarran so that we don't do what we just did? Not to say that we'd have another Coup De Grace in our deck, of course, that's impossible. But, well, okay, so sure, you got rid of one of our 3 Idarrans, but hopefully we can still find a way to put this to good use. Do we have another way to spawn in units? We do have our own Oneiromancy, in which case if we were to fish through our deck, I'm sure we could find a way. This is create in play, so I'm not sure if that counts, though this, I believe, does. The other big one would be Alzur. Tell you what, I think we Oneiromancy into Alzur, get Alzur out here, and then the second Oneiromancy will trigger with Alzur, spawning a 13 provision cost unit. And then what if we just, like, swipe Idarran back? And then we got a bunch of Regises. And we played a 9 provision... What was 9 provision cost card to steal that Idarran? And so we got Imke, which when she's in the range row and she's not here, every allied turn on turn end gain 2 coins. Unfortunately, it looks like we won't have coins. And Regis is a card that is great with the deployability, but not so much when he's just out there on the playing field. So, okay. Not as good as it could have potentially been, but we did deliberately steal the Idarran of Ulivo so that we could potentially do exactly the same thing in the next round. So we'll see if we can find an even better way to pull it off next time round. We did also just lose our Alzur. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to get him back at this stage. In which case, what do we go for here? Well, sure, the Regises, they may only have 1 strength at the moment, but if we were to, say, use a triangle within a triangle on them, they would get boosted by 13 apiece. There's something to be said for that, and I think we might want to go with that here. Let's split it a bit between the 2 rows in case our opponent has something like a Geralt Jordan. If we had 3 coins, we could also create a shield on MK, but that's obviously not going to happen. Okay, so assuming you play her in the range row, that means that you are going to draw your highest provision cost card, and we are going to draw our lowest, which gives us an assimilate unit, which is not terrible to set up with other things, though at the moment at least, that's not terribly intriguing. I sort of want to save the Mage Torturers for a future round in order to set up a future Coup De Grace, so I think we might want to not play them, and maybe we play the Ducal Guard in order to have someone to get boosted if we do follow up with subsequent Imperial Diplomacies. Otherwise, a Devil's Puffball could destroy one of our opponent's strongest units. They do have an 11 strength Shoop Knight, which is a little intriguing. Slave Hunter could also theoretically get higher with their Assimilate there. So maybe we do go with the Devil's Puffball instead and save the Assimilate for a future round. Okay, and they get to play a gold unit, and they get to do that twice, because this is a special card, so we'll see what they choose. Johnny is really strong. We were using Johnny heavily in our Druid-themed Skellige deck, but Johnny in just about any deck in this seasonal event will work, because he'll deal 2 damage every time you play a special card, and obviously lots of special cards in this event. Then some fairly consistent, albeit somewhat slow, damage over here from Ivo. Okay. That change anything? You are just barely in the lead right now. I would love if we could pass here, though, because all of our remaining cards are either based on Assimilate, or triggering Assimilate, or combination between Assimilate and setting up Coup De Grace. So I think maybe we do play Ducal Guard here, and then worst comes to worst, if this round keeps on going longer, then we have reason to play Imperial Diplomacy. Okay, so you damage the Ducal Guard, and then you just damage it again, enough to outright take it out. You still only have a 3-point lead. We are even in terms of cards right now, so we could pass and just take the round 1 loss, but I feel like this is still winnable. It would take perhaps a bit of luck with an Imperial Diplomacy, because of course we don't know what we're going to get with this, and maybe for that reason it is still worth throwing down at least 1 Mage Torturer. Maybe we save the other one for round 2. Let's try it. And I suppose if we were to give someone spying, maybe we just give you a bit of a scare and put it on someone like, say, Shoop. We'll pass here. We do have a slim lead at the moment, which hopefully means our opponent will play 1 more card. If not, and they pass, then we'll take the round 1 win. But then Imperial Diplomacy will be next on our list. And you're boosting by 10, and that will trigger twice. And this was a very popular card for the previous time round when there was a double special seasonal event. That was oftentimes people's favorite last card to play for a big 20 strength boost at the very end when you least suspect it. And with that being said, our opponent's lead now is quite a bit larger, and I'm not sure an Imperial Diplomacy is going to be enough to make up for that, unless we were to, say, use our leader ability, but I think that's also something that works best with Assimilate, and we only have one Assimilate unit out there, so I think we do pass here. And we still have an interesting setup for the next round, doing many of the same things that we did here. We just hope that we get a little bit luckier with the units that we spawn in. Okay, and part of the reason why I have so much confidence in this round here is that we have Coup De Grace, a way of creating a spy to target with Coup De Grace, then 2 Oneiromancies to do whatever we want with. I think from here on out, that probably means Imperial Diplomacy is next to go, and we'll get our other Coup De Grace, and I suppose we maybe even swap you out, and we draw into Idarran. Okay, this is exactly what we want. Okay. You play Lippy. This is up there with, say, something like Masquerade Ball as my least favorite cards in the game. The deck flipper, I like to call it. Switching your discard pile with your deck, which for Skellige can be a very big deal because there are a lot of discard pile synergies. Though I'm not seeing any here, because oftentimes what happens is you'll find there are a couple of cards that immediately make their way onto the playing field. Though it does mean that any great cards that you played in the previous round, you are now able to play again. And so our big thing here is that we are looking to be able to create a spy on the opposing side, then create a copy of that spy on our side, and then if we have Idarran of Ulivo out, create multiple copies of that spy. So I think what we do here first, though, is let's ease into it a little bit, because our opponent doesn't necessarily have a card that we want to make a spy of just yet, but because they just did the quote-unquote deck flip, I think that means that they are likely to play some big cards here, or pass early. And, this is actually a tricky one, because we want to save many of our cards here for our combo. We want Idarran, we want Coup De Grace, and we want the Mage Torturer. I think that means that Oneiromancy is next to go here. In which case, what do we take with Oneiromancy? Could go with just Imperial Diplomacies, or our own Slave Hunter. Okay, well, I think it has to be Oneiromancy, and then we're going to have to think on the fly here. How about we go Slave Hunter first, and then we'll trigger some of your Assimilate by, say, using Cantarella? Swipe a card from our opponent's side. We hope it's good, and, well, that it certainly is. Boost by 10, and now that means we've done it. We have passed you. We will be down 1 card for round 3, but I'm hoping that this big setup that we're looking for will be enough. Okay, and I've been seeing this a little bit as of late. I think we saw it in our previous video. We just created another copy of Oneiromancy, which I don't think is supposed to happen, so that might actually be a bug with the dual casting event, but I mean, at least for now, having a second copy of that is certainly nice. This is another card that I think works well if we have multiple copies of things, so that's fine. I think Imperial Diplomacy might still be the thing we're looking to get rid of here. And then Duchess's Informant can work well with Vigo, but maybe we think bigger, and Offering will be tough to make it work, but it's possible. And we need our opponent to have some cards over on their side before we can start doing all of our combinations here. So I think what we do is we lead off with Vigo, and in many ways we actually hope that he gets taken out, because we want our opponent to get rid of any of their damage or just outright removal cards so that we can pull off the Idarran plus Torturer into Coup De Grace and create a bunch of copies uninterrupted. We could do that, or we could even go with Oneiromancy first, and I think that would just lead to, say, Imperial Diplomacy or Duchess's Informants to trigger the Assimilate on Vigo as many times as possible, and that still means Vigo first. And with Vigo, it is a 1-strength copy of this card, so Duchess's Informant is usually the best card to get in this circumstance. However, because there are no cards to create a copy of, unfortunately, it doesn't work. We'll go with the Slave Hunter, because it is 1-strength, yes, it is still Assimilate, but it does have the 2 damage as well. And we could even use Offering on our Slave Hunter if it remains on the playing field here. And we know that our opponent did get all of their cards back into their deck from their graveyard, so they can play Shoop's Day Off once again. And they will, of course, play it twice because it's a special card. Okay, which Shoop are you using here? Spawn random row effects on all rows for 3 turns. It could complicate things a bit here. That means there will be some damage, although it affects both you and us. And then your second one will be damage an enemy unit. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that we wanted to make sure that you got out of your system. So now we can start doing the things that we want to do. And just to take a quick look here, you put Blood Moon on your own row. This means that a random unit will gain bleeding for 2, and then if it's already bleeding, it'll take 2 damage. In the melee row, you have damage the highest unit by 2. In our melee row, we have split 3 damage randomly. In our range row, we damage 2 random units by 1. Okay, so these could potentially be targets for us to use Coup De Grace on. I don't love this one, especially when there are already statuses in the rows, so I think we go with maybe Shoop Knight, but we might want to bide some time here, see if there's anything better, and then go with something like Oneiromancy first. Though I do kind of like saving Oneiromancy for a renew play later on, if we do find ourselves spawning a unit that we want to create an additional copy of, and if our opponent does destroy Idarran of Ulivo, that is actually a way to get him back. Okay, and here's your Oneiromancy. You're bringing back Johnny. Some more damage incoming. That is concerning, because that will be pretty consistent damage. That'll be hard to avoid and could be enough to shut down what we're trying to set up here. And then, oh, you can Purify. You're going to use it on Shoop. That you are. Okay. So that's tough. This Shoop does have 2 life, which means that we could theoretically use Coup De Grace and just have the Death Blow trigger, and therefore we would be able to make a copy of this. But like I said, not a huge fan of creating a copy of this specific one. This one's a little bit more usable for us, and it wouldn't even be that bad to say, make a copy of Johnny on our side. But I think here, we're starting to run out of time. I think we do need to play Idarran, and like I said, worst comes to worst, even if our opponent does destroy him, we will be able to bring him back with Renew, and we can use our Oneiromancy to get that. We do still have our leader ability, so we could play that at some point soon as well. Okay, and you're boosting Johnny on this occasion, and remember, every time they play a special card, they're dealing 2 damage from Johnny. That does make Idarran quite low here, especially when you take into account the weather effect there. So Idarran is hanging on by a thread. Can we still find a way to, say, make one of these a spy, and then trigger Coup De Grace on them? Do we still have a Mage Torturer in our deck? We do not, so we can't even use Oneiromancy to get that. Though, could we do something like Oneiromancy into Renew, then use Renew to get a Mage Torturer and make someone into a spy? Yes, I think we could, and I think that is the answer here. Let's go Oneiromancy into Renew. Renew, we play this, we get our Mage Torturer. This is our second Oneiromancy. With that second Oneiromancy, I mean, do we have anyone we want to create a copy of? No, we can't really do that. So let's just put down something that is quick, like this, and then let's actually make a copy of Johnny here, and it doesn't really matter which row we put you in. And so we hope that our opponent doesn't have any more sources of purification. If they do, then this is going to backfire on us, because we aren't going to be able to actually pull off the Coup De Grace on Johnny. And, well, they do have it. Boosts him further and deals damage in the process. And if you take out Idarran of Ulivo, that does mean that we have now run out of our Renew, though it is actually our other Assimilate unit that you take out. So of all the units that you could have destroyed there, that was the best one for it to happen on. Do we have any ways to salvage this at this stage? Still no targets for Duchess's Informant. Could create something new with the Dazhbog Runestone. We don't know what we'll get, so maybe that's the type of wildcard we're looking for in this situation. We do already have an offering in our hand, and then Devil's Puffball could destroy something. If we were really concerned about Johnny's repeated damage, that might not be a bad idea, but because we'd be using Oneiromancy to get that, that means we'd only play it once, and we wouldn't get the kill. So I think for that reason, we do Oneiromancy, and we will take the Runestone, and we will hope for something special on this Runestone, and look at that! Another source of spying. Second round, will Imperial Diplomacy. So Spy on Johnny, Imperial Diplomacy into, I don't really know that it matters much, but we really hope that doesn't get rid of Coup De Grace. It may. Well, it got rid of the same card that it drew, so that was actually a risky play there. This draws a card and then discards a card. I was worried that it was going to do that to Coup De Grace, and our turn timer had already expired, so I didn't get to choose there. It just randomly chose it. Okay, and they are using Oneiromancy. Do they have a way to purify? No, but they do have a way to steal a unit. Is it going to be Idarran? If so, then we will use Coup De Grace on Idarran once more. No, it's going to be, okay, assimilate unit. Sure, although, what's coming next? Wait, hold on. How many of these cards do you have? You have 2 Shoops days off? That's how you got the Shoops earlier. Okay, Idarran goes down. That does stink. However, we can still at least create some copies of Johnny, yes. We would have been able to create twice as many copies in all likelihood if we still had Idarran out there. But we can't get him back now. So I think that means that we proceed with Coup De Grace on Johnny. Get Johnny down there. And then do it again on Johnny. Again. Create another Johnny. And this should start to kick off quite a bit. I think it is now time for Double Cross. And we could banish a unit. Oh, or we could play the Shoop that boosts an allied unit. Or we could create and play a gold unit from any faction. Oh, man. These are great cards remaining. This is also concerning that our opponent may be able to destroy the Johnnies that we just created. But we can bring back another round of them with our next Coup De Grace. I think we go with Uma's Curse here, but so many interesting things. Oh, Uma's Curse we could use into... Oh, man. So many good options. I think we go with you. Whenever someone gets boosted on the opposing side, we get boosted by the same amount. And we know they have a boosting card in their hand. And with luck, that may mean that they target that unit instead of the Johnnies. Because we would still like to keep them, even if we can get some back. But here comes the Crothy Heat Wave. Who will you banish? Yes, you did banish the unit that we just created with our leader ability, and I'm fine with that. In fact, you didn't banish the Johnnies? Okay, well, here come more of them. So I don't know if this is actually going to be enough, but the amount of damage every time we play a special card is going to get pretty extreme, except now the Johnny is gone. And that means that because we destroyed it, we can't create additional copies of it. That's unfortunate. We could deliberately target the Shoop Mage here. That would create a copy of it. I'm not sure we want the row effects, though. We may not, because we have some low-life Johnnies at the moment. So I think we just hit someone just for the damage here. In which case, maybe it's the Mage Torturer in case you are able to trigger Assimilate. And then the Johnnies will still get in their damage. So our opponent does have card advantage here. They have 3 cards to our just 1 card. So probably not going to manage to pull this one off, but still, I think we managed to pull off maybe not quite the combo we were looking for, but something very close to it. So there, Uma's Curse. They'll play a Nilfgaard card that allows them to spawn and play the last tactic card they played. We have tactic cards. I don't know if you have had any. Ooh, and that's some damage right there. No, it's going to destroy the Johnnies. How dare you? We worked so hard to get those, and then you come in and just destroy them. Like that. That's rude. Okay, now for this one, I think we only have the offering card remaining. Damage by 1, and then if we destroy a unit with that, then we can play a bronze unit from our graveyard and give it doomed. Now, we won't be able to destroy anything with the first round, but because this is a special card, we'll be able to play it twice. So on the second round, yes, we can get a kill with this. So I think we target the Shoop Mage. First one, nothing special. We still get a little bit of damage from Johnny. Then this one, we will take you out, which means we will be able to play a bronze unit from our discard pile. And I guess we go with, I mean, we could go with the Mage Torturer here and say just apply another spying because we can. And that could have been, I suppose, an additional way to set up the Coup De Grace. Although we did ultimately find a way to pull that off. So our opponent passes there with 2 cards remaining, and we may have lost the game there, but as far as I see it, mission accomplished. Okay, so this time we'll go against Scoia'tael. And we do have Idarran of Ulivo, we do have Coup De Grace, and we do have Mage Torturers. So the combo we're going for here is to create a spy on the opposing side, hit that spy with Coup De Grace, and with Idarran of Ulivo out there, we will create additional copies of that spy. So let's make it happen. That means that the Assimilate is maybe not strictly necessary here, but why don't we get rid of some of our Assimilate units, and Duchess's Informant is good for triggering that Assimilate, yes, but that's not really the primary thing we're going for here. Okay. So you get to play a specific unit from your deck. It's an elf, it is a sage, that is one of the best cards in this seasonal event because it will continue to get boosted every time you play a special card, and you will get 2 of them out there. That's not necessarily the type of card that I was thinking we might try to create copies of with Coup De Grace, but I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. I was thinking more the big gold unit with 13 provision costs, but like I said, this is one of the best units in this seasonal event, so might not be a bad idea to make it happen here. Alternatively, we could say start to set things up a bit with putting down an Idarran of Ulivo, and then maybe at that point in time our opponent plays something bigger, and then we want to have that be our target. But we do have a couple of Mage Torturers here, so I think we can throw this down here, apply a Spy, and then we'll see what happens. Our opponent may have Purify and remove that, because Scoia'tael does have a fair bit of Purify. Okay, and that is another common Scoia'tael card for at least this archetype here, where it seems as though they are focusing on the Vitality. The card will get boosted whenever it has Vitality at the end of the turn. And I was expecting them to use a leader ability charge to make that happen, though they didn't here. They did use their Tactics, so that's a fairly strong card, yes. But I think as things currently stand, these Sages are definitely still our target for creating those copies. Next, I think that means we want to put down our Idarran. I'm concerned that as soon as we play this, he will get destroyed. We could potentially bring him back with a Renew. Problem is, we don't have any way of getting Renew in our hand to play it. So we'll put him down there. We hope he sticks around. That way we can create additional copies of the Sage when we do use Coup De Grace. But we don't know if that's going to work. But if not, then we'll just use Coup De Grace itself, and we'll create a couple copies with that. Well, here comes the Purification. As expected, yes. However, we do have a way of reapplying that Spy, because we do have another one of our Mage Torturers. Okay, so now our hope is that that was your only source of Purify in your hand right now, and that as soon as we say play our second Mage Torturer, you'll not be able to remove this Spy. So, fingers crossed. Going to deliberately target the Sage with the most life on it. That way, if we do start dealing a bunch of damage with the Coup De Grace, it still won't go down. Okay, now you're doing the damage. I think this is going to be Idarran of Ulivo who goes down here. It will be enough with the additional copy. Yeah. Okay. So I think we still follow up with the plan. It's not going to be quite as good as we would hope, but it should still work here. So it's Coup De Grace on you. Create another one. And then we do it again on the same target. Create another one. It will also trigger Assimilate. And so it could have potentially been worth it to put down our Slave Hunter and our Ducal Guard in advance. However, because we need to pull this off while this unit still has spying on it, and we don't know how quickly our opponent might do things like Purify, we have a bit of a time constraint here, so I think we'll settle for this. Okay, now you're going to damage to at least take out one of the Sages, though tell you what, we do have a way to get back that Sage. See who you target with this next one here. Won't be enough damage to destroy anything. Okay, so now what we do here is, if we're feeling patient, we could start to play other Assimilate units like a Slave Hunter, like a Ducal Guard. Otherwise, what we do is we play Offering, destroy this 1-strength Wandering Tree Ant, which will allow us to play a Bronze unit from our graveyard and give it Doomed. That unit would be the one that you just destroyed, the Sage. So I think maybe we do opt for something like a Slave Hunter next. We are way behind our opponent right now, so this is potentially not the best idea here. It's likely that our opponent may pass here, and we'd have to use a bunch of cards to try to catch up. So don't do this. But in the interest of trying to pull off this combo, we'll see if we can get the job done. Could use Offering now. We could, again, play another Ducal Guard. Long term, this is better to play this next and then use Offering. The question is, when does our opponent pull the plug and pass the round? But I think either way, it is rather unlikely that we'll be able to pass them anytime soon. So I think we need this. And then Offering is next. Okay, so they do pass. That is probably unfortunate. Now we have to do the mental maths of, do we think that we can get the job done with Offering into a Sage? Or would we rather also pass here, take the round 1 loss, and just hope that we do better in rounds 2 and 3? And I think that the best way to win is probably to pass now, but we're not necessarily looking to win here as much as we're just looking to see what we can do. So we'll play the Sage. Put you here, sure. Oh, technically what we should have done is damage with the Slave Hunter elsewhere so that we could get another kill with the Offering, although I don't think we have anything else to bring back with Offering anyway, so it may not matter. Then damage doesn't really matter because we're going to play another card anyway. So we're Gonna have another turn, yes. And with this, now what I'm thinking is we go Devil's Puffball on one of the big opponents, that being likely this Sage. Only downside to that is that the Sage only has one unit adjacent to it, so we won't get as much out of the death blow damaging adjacent units, so I think it actually is better to use it on you. And then the Sages will get boosted in the process. That brings us close, and then the Slave Hunter will do the trick here. And so we went down 2 cards, which is certainly not good, but we did still get the round 1 victory, and it's not out of the question at this stage that we could win the match. Okay, so what I'm thinking here is we almost certainly are going to instantly pass in this next round, force our opponent to play 1 card in order to win round 2, and then in round 3 we have only a 1 card disadvantage, so that means that we can think long term here. And so Duchess's Informant, maybe not great, although it could be a target for Coup De Grace. Otherwise, the Runestone, not sure this is best for us here. Renew could bring back Idarran of Ulivo. That looks very good in that case. Triangle within triangle is great, though if we're trying to pull off the combo again, then it's not really something that will work there. Alzur, absolutely. I'm all for it. We are still going to pass immediately here. We are playing for round 3. Okay, so they're Oneiromancying, which is a really good card, so I suppose in some ways good for them to get rid of it here, but at the same time, that I believe was their first copy of it, which means they will create 2 echoed copies in round 3, and so in some ways that's actually a bad thing. Though they're getting rid of Shaping Nature, except, oh, but that creates more echoed copies. Well, we have a good idea of what they're going to be drawing into for round 3. A bunch of Oneiromancies, a bunch of Shaping Natures. And for us, we have Alzur, who can spawn units. We will be using Renewed to bring back Idarran of Ulivo, which will be a way to spawn additional units. We have Coup De Grace, which will be another way of spawning units. We just need, ideally, a way to get spies for Coup De Grace to be a target. Duchess's Informant is potentially a way, at least on one occasion, to have a target. We'd like more. Do we have any more Mage Torturers in our deck, or did we play them all already? We did play them all already. That is unfortunate. Renew could bring back one of them, yes, but I think we probably do want to get rid of some of these guys here. Offering could bring back one. Could bring back 2 if we're lucky. Okay, so they're leading off with a Veil card, and that is unfortunate because that means that we can't give it Spying. So this definitely will not be something that we can create copies of. At least not without using something like Duchess's Informant. Question then would be, is this something that we want to have as our target for Duchess's Informant? Would give us a little bit of source of damage, which might be a way to set up something like Offering or Coup De Grace later on, so not terrible in that sense. Though I think what we do now is we lead off with our Assimilate unit. If this goes down, certainly not the end of the world, but if it does stick around, then it will get boosted a lot from all the cards that are not in our starting deck that we are hopefully about to play. Okay, and here comes round 1 of Oneiromancy. That'll give them another one of those cards that gets boosted when it has Vitality, and now I'm expecting them to use one of their leader ability charges on that, as well as some damage. Okay, yep, to get rid of our card that we have out here, and so, sure, we won't get the chance to trigger all of our assimilates. Not the end of the world. We would have liked it, but of all the cards to get destroyed, that was the one that I was most willing to sacrifice, so that's another reason why I played it first. And now we could opt to create a copy of either this card here or this card here with the Duchess's Informant, so a little bit more in the way of options. Not sure that this is any better of a target for us, because we ourselves are not going to have many sources of Vitality, so maybe we just stick with the plan here and go Duchess's Informant next. Create a copy of you. And do we need to play you in a certain row? We don't. I'm not sure it matters much here. Go melee, because technically speaking, Scoia'tael does have some cards that deal additional damage when you're in a more distant row. Okay, so they're bringing a bronze unit back from their graveyard. And ooh, that would have been a better target to create a copy of, but it's potentially not too late to do just that here. They'll boost at least one of them up with Vitality. So, let's see. You can deal 2 damage. That means if we damage you, that will get you down to 1 HP. Then that will give us 2 1-strength targets for Offering. Then Offering we can use to get back 2 Mage Torturers, which we can use to put Spying on both of the Sages to create copies of the Sages with Coup De Grace. That's what I'm thinking. So, first that means we have to do this. Then we do Offering. And then we pick you. And this is the Mage Torturer, which we will use on you. And then this is the other Offering. We'll hit you. bring back the other Mage Torturer. I suppose we could just directly create a Sage. That's not a bad idea, but because we have Coup De Grace, and Coup De Grace really wants to have a spy on the opposing side, I think it is still best for us to make sure that we can pull off the Coup De Grace play. Otherwise, Coup De Grace just becomes a 3 damage special card, which is nothing special. Okay, and they're going to play a Bronze Nature card from their graveyard, so that likely will be some damage. Oh no, it's Purification. Okay, so smart play means they will get to remove the spy, which is unfortunate. Means we no longer have an obvious target for Coup De Grace. May need to get a little bit more creative with how we pull that off then. But I think now what we do is instead of going Coup De Grace next, what we'll do is we renew into Idarran of Ulivo, and then that will make it so that when we do start using Alzur, Coup De Grace, we'll start spawning in a bunch of units. We hope that especially after they just played their Forest Protector, which would have been a way to get access to some of the damaging nature cards, they no longer are as capable of taking out Idarran of Ulivo, because, of course, with Renew being played, that means we won't be able to get him back if he does go down. Let's do that here. We get, actually, I think we go Sage first, and then we'll go Idarran. Because the Sage will then get boosted in the process. I don't know if this technically counted as spawning or not. If it did, then we should have played Idarran first, because then we would have spawned in 2 Sages, but I did not have time to read the fine print. Oh no. Here comes the banishment. Who are you targeting? Idarran, and then will it be a Sage? Yes. Okay, so unfortunately that means we can't create additional copies of the units that we spawn. Alright, fine. Well, I think we still go with Alzur here, and that means that Alzur should be relatively safe, assuming that at this point in time, our opponent has probably gotten rid of most of their damage, or outright removal. So Alzur down, and this could potentially be a good time for us to use our leader ability. We don't know what we're going to get, but we can see almost all of our opponent's cards. I think we give it a shot here. And Oneiromancy. Don't mind if I do. I mean, we could have also taken the card that would have allowed us to reset. That would have been helpful, but what if we say just, like, steal cards instead? Like, you? And, like, maybe we then play our own Oneiromancy to Oneiromancy. Let's do it. And then now we play our own Sage. There. How's that? And in the process, we did spawn some big units, although unfortunately we got Regis, who has a big deploy ability, but we're spawning him in, so it doesn't trigger deploy. We also got King Belohan, and when we play a unit with 4 or less power, it gets boosted up to 4. Not sure we have any of those that's going to affect. Okay, so you're using that Shaping Nature, and we know you probably have several of those. And giving Vitality to the unit that gets boosted when you give it Vitality is fitting. Could have potentially swiped that unit. Might have been better than taking the Sage. I mean, both of them were going to be strong long-term. So now, let's see. What I'm looking at is, could we destroy a card with Devil's Puffball, and with the Death Blow dealing 3 damage, set up the Killing Blow on Coup De Grace somewhere where, at the moment, it doesn't exist, and I'm eyeing Force Protector? If we do get that, then do we have Bronze Nature cards? Or not. We have not stolen and used any of theirs, unfortunately, so it doesn't help us that much. It could potentially still be a decent play, but I think that likely means that we're just going to target the biggest unit here, and so it likely will be either the Sage or the Get Boosted When I Have Vitality card, and Sage is a little bit higher now. This probably has a little bit more potential for growth, but let's go with the Sage because it's in the middle, so we'll damage adjacent units, and we will boost our Sages in the process. And we're down a card, but we are winning by a little bit here, so it'll be close. And we did see that they have Novigradian Justice, which is very strong, assuming that they have some good dwarves to play. Opting for one of the ones that can damage itself, along with another unit, yes, but I'm just eyeing that as a potential target for Coup De Grace as well, if it has low HP. But, no, doesn't seem like it. Okay, so now we are down to just Coup De Grace. The only card that we could outright destroy in one round of it would be these Wandering Tree Ants, and they are 1 strength cards. So that's it's not great. We don't really want to target that. We could potentially instead go for something like Mahakam Volunteers, and with 2 rounds of Coup De Grace, we'd be able to destroy it on the second round. Still not going to be that much better. That might be as good as it gets here. Alternatively, if we take you, again, it'd be a similar story. We'd get you on the second round, but we would get some damage out of it, so I think we might actually want to do that. Again, unfortunately, Forest Protector, we don't have any nature cards to use, so can't take full advantage of doing it on that. We get you, we'll play you, and we do still have some Assimilate cards, so we'll trigger that as well. But we are no longer in the lead, which means it's going to be awfully difficult to catch our opponent at this point. Okay, and so there is the self-damage and damage another unit in the process, so that could be an easy target for Coup De Grace, and then you have the reset. That was one of the cards that we were considering stealing, and then take your pick which one they reset. Sure, they go for the Mage Torturer, it looks like. So now our last Coup De Grace, we are facing a similar decision to what we saw ourselves facing last time. And so do we go for the Mahakam Volunteers? We potentially could. Otherwise, if we were to target you, we would manage to take you down with the first Coup De Grace, and then we could get a copy of you from that. And then on the second round of Coup De Grace, we could get a Wandering Treant and get a 1 strength unit. I mean, I still don't think that's doing much for us. How much strength do you have? You have 4? I suppose that is still slightly better than hitting Mahakam Volunteers twice. Although this is reducing 6 strength in order to get 4 strength. This is reducing 5 strength in order to get 5 strength. So I think it's a well, take your pick. Well, let's go for this. Play you. I suppose this will lead to more Assimilate. So actually this is preferable in that case, because we'll be playing more of the units that are not from our starting deck. Still not enough to catch our opponent, but we did succeed in doing a lot of the spawning that we were looking to do. Unfortunately, lost Idarran of Ulivo, and that could have been a way to make it kick off a little bit more, and given how close this looks like it may be, might have been a difference maker here. Then, of course, Oneiromancy last. Maybe I spoke too soon, but nonetheless. Oh, and now you're going to play this huge card, which is fantastic for this seasonal event. Herald Guard gets boosted by 1 for all the special cards that you've played, and of course in this seasonal event you will have played a lot of special cards, so talk about a card we would have liked to have stolen. That would have been at or near the top of the list. So there's a look at a pretty insane deck for the dual casting seasonal event. Is it effective? Maybe not, but you're in for a lot of excitement. That much I can say for certain. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know, would you see yourself using this kind of deck? And if so, what kind of combos do you think you could pull off? Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.